The White House is fact-checking the President of the United States again. This time, he committed to a possible war with China.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made.
Well, then the walk back, and it came snappy fast, with the White House insisting there's been no change in the U.S. policy toward Taiwan. We've seen this kind of thing before, after the president made those comments about Vladimir Putin, for instance.
Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Let's go straight to Kayleigh.
Yeah, Harris, it's always an unnamed anonymous White House official that cleans up the blunder. Look, these gaffes are alarming. They're weird to watch. They're disconcerting when it's the president. But when it's in the context of foreign policy, Harris, it takes on an entirely different set of alarm, thinking that you could set off an enemy, a foe, a world power. And in this case, with this Taiwan remark, who was it that cleaned it up? The White House official who declined to be unnamed. In the case of suggesting regime change in Russia, who is it that cleaned it up? The official line was within minutes, a White House official was telling reporters it was not the case. And Harris, it's not just these two. When he was in Warsaw, remember what he said about chemical weapons? If Putin uses chemical weapons, he said, quote, it will trigger a response in kind, somehow suggesting the United States would use chemical weapons. Troops in Ukraine, he told the 82nd Airborne, you're going to see when you're there. And then the minor incursion remark that Jen Psaki must have been dictating the cleanup statement in her office. I mean, the list goes on. This is foreign policy. You can provoke enemies.
Well, look, and Joey, with the minor incursion language, that really put us in a new spot with all of this, because that was the first time we had seen the president on the world stage say something that could literally get some of us hurt. Yeah. Namely, our men and women who might have to do something about the words that were coming out of his mouth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even before that, Harris, he said that everyone in Afghanistan would get out of Afghanistan. He said that the Taliban wouldn't take over Kabul. He said a lot of things, and I'll be honest with you, it's not so much what he's saying as much as the fact it is not what his White House is saying that's concerning to me. I don't think anyone can sit here and affirmatively say they understand what the Biden administration's policy or even posture is towards something like Taiwan and China. I mean, it's bad enough that the 1979 agreement is political, speaking out both sides of your mouth. It's bad enough that we have an official agreement that is completely ambiguous and openly so. But if that's going to be the case, if that's what our government's put us in, we should have leaders that are very strong, stern, and very solid thinking on this, and it doesn't look that way. I want to know if my president is postured and mentally focused on the idea of going to war with China over Taiwan. And right now, I can tell you that his words say one thing, his administration says another. That's a scary place to be in.
Look, this is the third time he said it, Cheryl. It isn't the first time. So, as Joe Concha told me last hour, that leads you to believe that Biden believes it. That the problem is, as Joey's pointing out, if you aren't together with your administration on who you'd go to war with, what do you agree upon? Because they keep correcting him on a whole lot of things.
They do, and in particular to that point with China, you know, we got an instant reaction this morning when he made those comments from a Chinese official, and their language was, of course, very stern. They're blasting us. I mean, it's not just a political relationship that we have with the Chinese, it's also an economic relationship as well. We are still very tied to China as a country. And so when he speaks, it's not just about the military men and women on that side of it, which is dangerous enough. And don't get me started on what he said and not said about North Korea, which he's also kind of put his foot in his mouth on North Korea in the last 24 hours. But then when you start to put, I mean, this is a whole cascade of things that this affects. Right? This is not just the president saying, you know, well, of course we're going to defend, we're going to put the military out there. Well, look, that also affects American companies. That affects American travelers. That affects Americans that depend on goods and services from China, and we still do, unfortunately. So we're very tied to their boat. I know this administration wants to maybe start to separate the two economies. I hope they're serious about that. Let's have that discussion instead of this one-off and this one word that we got from President Biden this morning.
Emily, you know, what we haven't talked about is the possibility that the president doesn't know what he's talking about. That, you know, we see the possibility for that with the economy. As he says something completely anathema to anything that the experts are saying about a coming recession, as he sort of, I don't know, freelances on the topic like he's just jarring with a friend, not talking about the economy that we all live by. So, I mean, it's possible that when it comes to foreign policy, he just doesn't know what he's talking about.
And the most frightening part about that, Harris, is that that is the exact message that we are sending Beijing. That's the exact message that we sent the Kremlin, which is that this president doesn't know what he's talking about. And meanwhile, as Kayleigh pointed out, so we rely essentially on anonymous or unnamed White House officials or the press secretary to clean house, to clean up after all of these unforced errors by the president. But when it has to do with the realm of foreign policy and diplomacy, the stakes are so much higher than the average blunder that he engages in. You know, when he calls congressmen by the wrong gender, when he tragically addresses the victims of the shooting in Buffalo, for example, by the wrong name. You know, those we get all day, every day. Those are just really unfortunate and disheartening. But in this realm, the stakes are so high. And what happens if, unlike the mainstream media or unlike the Democratic Party, what if President Xi just doesn't accept the White House press secretary's cleanup or the anonymous officials' cleanup, right? What if he says, well, actually, what I heard the president say was that he would engage in force, and therefore I will respond in kind right now prophylactically. That's the danger this has here, is if equal in-kind leaders respond in kind with President Biden's comments. That's what's frightening.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd worry more about that with Putin when the president accidentally said he was going to put boots on the ground in Ukraine against Putin. Yeah, I think I'd worry about that because that event's already, you know, walked itself out. But we need China right now for other things. I mean, when you read closely, if Europe can't supply all the baby food formula before we can start making enough on our own, we may have to turn to China. I mean, it is mind-boggling how we got here. But they do all need to get on the same page. Not just because it's an election year, like that's a good enough reason. But Kayleigh, real quickly, I'll come to you with last thoughts on this. He needs to get on the same page with his people because when you lose trust in the president, the White House, and his administration, it can damage that party for years to come.
Yes, and I think this presidency will. The fact that Caitlin Collins, a White House correspondent, looked at the president and said, "What's your message to North Korea as they're about to shoot off missiles?" And he said, "Hello, period. Hello, period."
What does
that was
even
his
mean?
response. And Harris,
Is there anybody
we almost
out
didn't
there?
even get that because the White House cut the mic. The White House has control over that mic, and they cut it. So we only have like the audible transcript on the bottom. This is what they do. They're so scared of their own president, their own leader, they cut the mic. Hello, period, though. We all heard it or we all read it on the bottom of the screen.
And at what point is the mainstream media going to say, why do journalists keep having to ask for clarity, keep having to ensure, wait, that's not what you meant, right? That's not what you meant. At what point will everyone say these journalists are simply succumbing to this pattern, the cascade, as Cheryl said, of these unforced error with potentially dire consequences?
Well,
there's responsibility there too.
Turn off Twitter.
Yep.
Take away their ability to get likes so that they
go.
become less performative. That might do it.